overall life satisfaction increases because you're being intentional and you're actively choosing things that you find fulfilling instead of like constantly chasing after the next best thing or being worried that you're missing out on something else or doing things just because everyone else is.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjekovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Motivation Manifestation Monday. So I'm sure that everyone is familiar with the term FOMO, fear of missing out, but I had never heard of the term Jomo, which is joy of missing out, until I was watching this live stream gratitude meditation session on my Aura app last Friday, and someone typed it in the chat, and I was like, oh, that's so clever. And then I looked it up and I saw that it's actually been a thing for a while, and apparently I'm getting old because I'm totally out of the loop with terminology.
I
So,
didn't know it either, Tara.
I
So
was just going to ask, do you know what Jomo is? So, if you are ignorant, like Stephanie and I, Jomo is basically a mnemonic for not worrying about missing out on what other people are doing because you're happy following your own path and finding your own happiness. So, it's essentially the opposite of FOMO, which is when people get concerned that other people are having more fun than they are, or living a better life, or experiencing better things. And with FOMO, people compare themselves to others that they believe are somehow better off than they are. And sometimes this can be a positive thing because it can motivate or inspire you to do things to improve your own life. But FOMO can also be really damaging, and it can result in like negative views of yourself, and it can have a negative impact on your overall well-being. So whereas fear of missing out involves experiencing anxiety and negative emotions about not participating in some kind of event or experience, joy of missing out is about experiencing positive feelings of joy because you're not engaging in a certain event or experience. So instead of having to be present in that event, you're creating your own positive environment. And some of the stuff that I read commented that Jomo is for introverts and like people who are happy to not go out and they'd rather just stay home in their sweatpants on the couch and do things by themselves. But I was reading an article on PsyCom, which is a mental health and well-being website. And the psychologist was talking about how it's not about being antisocial, but it's more about this powerful mindset where you feel satisfaction being in the present moment and being grateful for what's happening currently in your life. And then by doing that, your overall life satisfaction increases because you're being intentional and you're actively choosing things that you find fulfilling instead of like constantly chasing after the next best thing or being worried that you're missing out on something else or doing things just because everyone else is. And when we're satisfied with what we have and we're happy with who we are, we're more likely to experience joy in things, and we're less likely to make like those unhealthy social comparisons to other people. And so practicing the joy of missing out in terms of being fully present in a particular moment can actually really help you reduce stress and anxiety, because when you focus on enjoying the moment and you appreciate the simple things, it can help you relax and boost your mood. And so this PsyCom article, it went over this list of habits for increasing the joy of missing out. And Stephanie, most of these were things that you and I talk about regularly on the podcast, like practicing gratitude, being more mindful, doing breath work, doing grounding, going for a walk. It also mentioned like slowing down and using your senses. And we've talked about this briefly before, but like paying attention to the way something smells or sounds or feels and like really being in the moment of that experience instead of multitasking, like just being present and focusing on whatever the activity is and actually enjoying it. And this article used the example of a shower, and it was like the experience of just taking the shower, not having music on in the background or listening to a podcast. And like that's how I take my showers because I always listen to something. And so this is where I struggle, because I feel like I'm constantly multitasking, or I'm thinking about the things on my to-do list for the day. And so, except for the time that I specifically set aside in the morning for my intentional gratitude practice, other than that time, I'm often rushing through my day and just trying to get shit done. And one of the things I read about practicing the joy of missing out was taking time to truly enjoy a meal, like paying attention to the taste and the texture of your food. And I realized this is something I rarely do. Like I eat standing in the kitchen, I'm shoveling food down so quickly, like someone's gonna pull my plate away if I don't finish it in 30 seconds. And it's not because I'm starving. It's just because there's other shit I need to do or I want to do or I'm distracted. And so, as much as I love food, which we've talked about before, I love to eat, but my mentality is like, okay, just get it out of the way so that I can move on and do the other shit I need to do. And I realized like the only time that I really slow down and enjoy a meal is if I'm out at a restaurant and I don't have the distractions of my to-do list or things going on at home. And I find that I actually do slow down. I let myself just relax and savor the meal that I'm eating. And it's an enjoyable experience.
I'm totally the same way. I eat standing up now because I've got like two toddlers, right? And if I sit down to eat, my son will be like climbing all over me, like trying to eat the food off of my plate instead of his plate. And so I just stand up and eat because it's just like easier. And then I try to rush through it because I think like, all right, we've got to get the kitchen cleaned up. Then we've got to do the, bath and then the bedtime routine. And it's just like total chaos. And I can't even remember the last time I just savored a meal and like actually truly enjoyed it. But I think I've always been that way. Like even growing up, my brother and I would eat dinner while watching The Simpsons. Like that was our nightly routine. Like we never ever were like mindful about eating. And you brought up the shower thing, and that is like one of the few times throughout the day that I don't do anything else. And I swear I get the most brilliant ideas while I'm in the shower. And it's because of that reason. Like I'm doing nothing other than this mundane task, not thinking about anything. And I will get like answers to my questions or something that I've been wondering. I'll have like a breakthrough and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to like jump on this now. So I do think when we slow down, it is a way to, almost like speed up and get questions to our answers and get more clarity. And we just don't have that when we're multitasking all the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to try that because in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get through this podcast or I'm gonna do this while I can in the 10 minutes I'm in the shower, I can knock out these two things. So I'm gonna try that. But I think another aspect of the joy of missing out is like stop committing to shit that you don't want to do and learn to say no. And this is another one that's often difficult for me. Like Stephanie, you know how sometimes you make plans to go out with someone because when you're talking about it, it sounds totally fun. And you're like, yeah, let's do this. And then the actual date rolls around and you're like, fuck, I don't want to go out. Like
That's
instead of
like literally every time I make plans. I do
yeah, it's like you're not excited anymore. And
that.
sometimes I go out and I end up having a good time. But then other times I go out and I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. Like I would rather be home working on a project I'm excited about or doing something that's like more in alignment with my goals. And I feel like, is like, am I antisocial? Like because I don't want to go out and do things?
No, I don't think you're antisocial at all. Like I think there's like this whole thing with introverts and extroverts, right? And like I never got this because I always thought that being an introvert meant like you're really like shy and socially awkward. And then if you're an extrovert, you're just this like outgoing person. But being an introvert, it just means you get drained from a lot of like social interactions and you actually feel more energized when you spend time alone. And that is totally me. And I know like when I was younger, I felt like I always had to be doing something. If I did not go out for one night, it was like, oh my gosh, I am missing out. Everyone's having fun without me. Like it was so ridiculous looking back at it. But now, like, I would much rather miss out on whatever they're doing so I could watch Netflix and like get a good night's sleep so I can, wake up and drink my coffee at 6 a.m. And just like you said, like every time I do commit to plans, I usually do dread it and wish I didn't go. But I think that's because of that like whole introvert part of me that just feels depleted. and I end up feeling like super drained and almost like hungover from social interactions.
Yeah, no, and I feel the same way. And so it's like if you don't feel like going out or you don't want to commit to something someone else expects you to do or wants you to do, like just don't fucking do it. And I think this is especially hard for young people because they don't embrace that joy of missing out because there's all this pressure from social media and friends to do what everyone else is doing and to go out. And at that point, like I think most young people just don't have that confidence to stand strong in their beliefs or in doing what they want to do or forging their own path. And like using myself as an example, like when I was in high school, like I thought I was so unique and different because I was in the goth scene and then the punk scene, and I wasn't part of the social popular cliques, but I basically had like my own clique of social misfits that I wanted to fit into. And I was often the center of attention within my group of friends, and I craved that sense of belonging, apparently. So I embraced the attention. And I was in this totally weird position because I hung out with a lot of kids who were like totally into drugs and partied hard and they did a lot of stupid shit. And I went to parties in like gang neighborhoods where fights would break out and people would get shot and then everyone would take off running and the cops would show up. I went to adult nightclubs when I was underage and I did it all the time. And like, honestly, I did a lot of dumb shit just to kind of fit in with my friends. But then I was also like a straight A honors student. I cared about my grades. I didn't want to get into trouble. So I was like straddling the fence between who I am at my core and like being the good kid and then turning into this delinquent and totally fucking up my life by wanting to impress my friends and hanging out with a group of people who really didn't give a shit about doing anything positive. And honestly, I was really lucky that I never got into serious trouble. And I swear I had a guardian angel because I put myself in some really bad situations. And even though like the whole FOMO thing wasn't identified at the time, I think that's what I was really going through because I wanted to fit in with my friends and not miss out on things that they were doing. And then everything changed when I went to college because I went to Berkeley and it was like 10 hours away from home. And the administration screwed up my housing contract for the dorms. And so I had nowhere to live. And I had like 2 days to figure out where I was going to live before school started. And I ended up in an off campus house with two grad students who had their own shit going on. And they didn't want to spend a lot of time with, the younger undergrad. So that was when I really learned like how to become comfortable with being by myself, doing things on my own because I didn't have a choice. I didn't have a group of friends anymore. And I had to learn to get comfortable, like going out to eat by myself or going shopping by myself. And if at first it was like very difficult for me because I wasn't comfortable being alone and experiencing that joy of just doing things on my own. But I eventually started to love it. And I think the pendulum like swung so far in the other direction because then all I wanted to do was like do shit by myself. Like I will go to a movie by myself with no problem. I have made dinner reservations and like taken a book and I've gone to a nice restaurant by myself and just enjoyed a meal while I'm reading. Like I'm on a date with myself and people just look at you like, oh, how sad, like that person's by themselves. But I actually enjoy it. And so it sounds really weird talking about it. But my point is like, I learned to embrace the joy of missing out, even though I didn't really know that that's what it was called. And so now I totally love spending time by myself and I love doing things that help me like disconnect from all the crazy shit that's going on around us.
Okay, my mom totally does that. She like goes out to eat and she'll bring a book or she'll like go to a movie by herself. And I always think that's so weird. So you could go hang out with my mom. And once again, we're learning so much about you, Tara. So you went to Berkeley, didn't know that, Miss
Oh,
Smarty
yeah.
Pants. And we need pictures. I need to see pictures of this goth teenage Tara. Okay, like I just got to see that. And we got to like post it in Patreon or something. That was obviously after Paul Walker, I'm assuming.
Yes, that was after. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, when I was in high school, obviously, like my friends were just everything to me, just like any other, teenager. And I was the same way where it was like every second of every day, like I had to be out and about could not stand being home or by myself or like away from the whole social scene. And my senior year and pretty much all through college, I ended up in this like super controlling relationship where I was literally isolated from all of my friends. And it was really hard and made my college years totally miserable and made me like super depressed. And when I finally broke up with the guy, it was like I felt like I had to make up for lost time because I had missed out, like that fear of missing out. And I had missed out on like years of just being a college kid. And so then, like, the pendulum totally swung back the other way, where I would go out and like binge drink pretty much every night, like it was my job. And then I ended up getting pregnant at a young age. And once again, like the pendulum swings the other way. And like now I'm in this situation where all my friends are out partying and living their best life. And I'm home with a baby, missing out again. So, like, I have just struggled back and forth really up until like my 30s with that whole feeling of like missing out. Like I had to grow up too early. Like I didn't really get to enjoy like my younger years and all that kind of stuff. But now it's like I've finally reached that point in my life where I just don't give a shit. Like I don't give a shit about what anyone else is doing or what they think of me because I feel confident in myself. Like I feel confident of what I'm doing in life and where I'm at in life. And like I have my family, I care about my family. And I think that is a lot of it too. I think we have this pressure from social media and things like that that make us afraid to miss out, but it's also because there's something that's really insecure within us. And I think that's why we all go through this like in our younger years, like as a teenager. But now, like, I just feel like I can fully embrace this season of life where I'm in, knowing that it's just a season. And like in the blink of an eye, my kids are going to be grown. And then I'll have free time once again to go do whatever I want to do. And then maybe the pendulum will swing the other way again. But for now, I'm totally content, like missing out on all of the things and just being at home with my kids, being present and going to bed like an old grandma at 10 o'clock.
See, I'm learning a lot about you too, Stephanie, because I didn't know a lot of the stuff you just said about your younger years. And at least you have 3 kids as an excuse for why you go to bed at 10, because I go to bed by like 9:30 and I have no children. So
Well, you have a lot of farm animals, and that is a big excuse. So,
I think like the most important thing is like you need to find that balance in your life about like being able to have that healthy view of enjoying time to yourself, but not focusing entirely on solitude and like not using the concept of the joy of missing out to avoid social interaction. And I read this article in Neuroscience News. It was published just a few weeks ago. And there was a recent study that was done by Washington State University, and it suggested that people who enjoy the joy of missing out tend to have higher levels of social anxiety. And I thought that was odd. But the study concluded that the people who experienced social anxiety were the ones who were focused on Jomo as a way to avoid social interaction, and not the people who were using it as a way to just enjoy the calming experience of what Jomo was supposed to be about. And I guess there were like 500 participants in this study, and they were asked questions around, how they enjoy spending time alone and disconnecting. But it also asked questions assessing like levels of loneliness and social anxiety and social media use, personality traits, and overall life satisfaction. And like the bottom line of the study was it really comes down to your motives for Jomo. Like if people are focusing on it as a means to recharge, then that's a healthy and positive thing. And it just shouldn't be used as a way to just totally avoid social interaction. So I think that's like where that balance comes into play.
yeah, that makes me think. I actually just read an article last night about this in South Korea. Apparently, like this avoiding social interaction is like a huge problem with their youth. And so they have started a program where they're actually paying people between the ages of like 9 and I think it was 21. But they're paying them to get out and interact because it's such a problem that they will literally like stay in their room on social media like 100% of the time. And they're trying to get young people to start like going out and interacting again. And I do think it's a bigger problem with this generation than it was when we were kids because we didn't even have texting. And like now they literally don't ever have to leave their room and they could still like quote unquote socially react or interact with tweets and texts and Snapchat and all those things. So it's really interesting. And I do think it's something that people have to get intentional about with themselves, with their kids on, okay, like it's great to have time alone, but you also can't completely just avoid the world forever. So I know it's a balance and I think social media and technology is making it a little more trickier than it was for us when we were kids.
Yeah. So it's like Stephanie and I talk about all the time, like go outside, go for a walk, just experience or embrace the experience of the simple things in your life and just really pay attention for like 2 minutes to enjoying nature or enjoying something without all of the distractions. And it really does make a difference. And like what you were saying about like the kids and the texting and all that, look, I'm in my late 40s and I would rather text than talk to people half the time. So I am not immune to all this shit that's happening.
Yeah, true. I hate when people call me. I'm like, text me like a normal person, psychopath. So I guess we're all dealing with it. But yeah, go get outside in nature today. Try to have some of that mindful alone time, but also don't be one of these people that like tries to hide from the world. So it's all about balance, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you back here for Weird Wednesday. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you get our latest episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if you could, please rate and review the show. We are going to be reading every single review, and I would love it if you hopped over to Instagram at Unapologetically Outspoken and say hi. We want to see who's out there and start a conversation, plus get all of the topics that you want us to talk about next. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.